resolutions, I would like to take this opportunity to wish Happy International Women's Day to all the women in the room. All right.
Isn't every day that? Depends who you talk to.
So starting with temporary resolution 39-21, this is coming through finance. This is a resolution to authorize payment for legal services associated with Project Ruby. Law Director Olam, would you like to add some commentary?
Thank you, Chairwoman down there. This is basically a then and now. We had to engage some outside legal counsel expertise with regard to pursuing our Project Ruby economic development project. And as you can see, they started back in December of last year, which we had a PO, but then they didn't bill us actually until February for December and January, so we had to create a second one, and we're just asking to pay for those legal services, and we would also ask for one reading with suspension if we could.
Okay. Mrs. Bobbitt, I have you as my second.
Yes.
Are there any questions regarding 39-21? All right, thank you. Temporary resolution 40-21, this is coming through Public Works. Mr. Schoonover.
It's fairly self-explanatory, hopefully, but if Mitch would come up and kind of just briefly explain, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, so this is, we've done things like this similar for public improvements that are made through a development. This is basically appropriating this money to hire third-party inspectors for, this would be specifically for the street improvement part. This is Timber Top subdivision that's they're working on right now. So there's been some, you probably have seen them working on sewer and things like that. This is, they're starting to get into the street portion of it, and these are the inspection fees we're appropriating into that, so. That's it.
That'll work, thank you. So we're going to ask for suspension.
Okay, and I have Mr. James as your second.
Yes, please.
Okay. Temporary resolution 41-21, this is coming through water pollution control for the rehabilitation of the concentrate line. Mr. James.
Yes, thanks, Chairwoman Danauer. Just as a brief preview before I ask Denise to come up and give us a little more information, this particular concentrate line is about 5 miles long, 14 inches diameter, has a whole lot of material in it. And this particular concentrate line limits the capacity of the South Water Plant and its ability to provide water to our city. This is no small project from the standpoint of not only cleaning the line, but some, I would say, modifications from a construction standpoint, as well as all the material that goes into that or comes out of that pond or that cleaning process will be placed in a pond that will then have to be dewatered and disposed of properly. So once again, this $850,000 that is included in the request is the high end of the estimate from the engineer, but it just depends on how everything goes for it. And I'll yield some time now to Denise to follow up with that.
I don't know that I have very much more to add to that. We're opening bids for this project on Friday, so we will have a next exact number for you for the next piece of or for the next reading, and so you can probably expect to see a starred copy at that time, and we'll know how we stand and what alternatives we're selecting and things like that.
Yes, Mr. Stokes.
So you expect it to be more than $850,000 right out of the gate, or?
No, I expect it to be less.
Well, then this is a not to exceed, so.
Right. Sometimes you like exact numbers.
Okay.
No, we have a number of alternates that we've added into the project, so it just depends which ones we decide to take.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing I know for sure. I've never known our utility departments to get a not to exceed by $850,000, get a estimate at 725 and then spend the other 125 on frivolous stuff. It's never happened, so.
Thank you.
That's kind of my point.
That's correct. That's right.
Well, yeah, straight up, yeah.
Okay, any other questions on 41-21? I know Denise sent a very thorough email out this morning, so
Yes.
thank you for that. I have 2 readings, and I have Mr. Hall as your second, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to temporary resolution 42-21, coming through water pollution control. This is an annual resolution. Mr. James.
I know it seems like I'm the one that's spending all of our money, but these are critical things. And I will yield some time now to Mr. Nixon to come forward. This is pretty much just an annual piece to replenish the pipe that we'll need for the projects that he has planned for this year.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of finance, this is the annual water pipe and fittings bid. It includes valves and hydrants and pipe and all the other appurtenances that go with our projects. This will be $185,000. We spent the same amount on pipe last year. And the project that are scheduled for this coming year and what we're doing with this pipe, with the exception of one area, is replacing aging infrastructure. So areas that we've been seeing a higher incidence of leaks in the system. This is part of our annual program to address that. So the 2021 schedule is North Ohio, Union to 6th, Talmadge, Lincoln to Reese, and Parkview and Woodcliff out off of North High Street beyond Rising Park. That area has, believe it or not, some very old 1-inch water line serving multiple homes. And I think Mr. Matlin, as a firefighter, you probably remember there's no hydrants, no fire protection back there. So we're going to likely have to be acquiring some easements up through people's front yards because the streets are very narrow. The right-of-way is very tight. So we'll be working on sooner rather than later. And I assume people are going to enjoy having a larger line to get more volume to their homes. So I'm not anticipating any problems getting those easements. We've had problems up there for several years, and when that little water line breaks, it puts everybody out of water pretty quickly. So that will be a project that we get into. And then the new pipe that we'll be installing with part of this pipe that we're purchasing is West Fair Avenue from ODOT out to the corporation limit out near the bypass. And this will serve the future Bower Park. And then ultimately, in the future, we will go under 33 to the other side so we can create a loop over there. But this first phase will just allow water to be there for an ultimate tap for Bower Park. So 2 readings is fine. If council is fine with that, that'll give us time to get things ordered and delivered before construction season really gets going. Of course, if weather stays like this is good construction season in March, but it's probably
We can
not.
almost use it now.
Yeah, we can almost use it now.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Nixon or Mr. James regarding 42-21? Okay. I have 2 readings. I have Ms. Teener as your second.
That's correct.
All right, temporary resolution 43-21. This is coming through finance. It was discovered that the engineering department has some computers that are causing a potential security risk for logging in because they're no longer supported. So we're asking for about $6,500 so that we can replace, I believe, 4 desktops and 2 laptops?
Correct.
Right? Mitch, do you have anything else to add, or did I cover it all? Okay. We are going for 1 reading because these have to be off the network by April 1st. Okay, Mr. Stoughton, that's what that email said.
No, I have a question.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you. So I sent a note to Mayor Scheffler and Service Safety Director Martin. I mean, I'm the chairman of the IT committee, and this never came up in that discussion of this need. And secondly, in alignment with no specific strategy in IT. I mean, the world is changing, and we're buying, I assume, PCs and loading software on them?
Yes, sir. So, we asked Mitch to roll his budget in this year. And we've discovered that it really wasn't budgeted, and we have a very tight budget in the engineering department. And so.
First of all, this is not about the need.
I know.
Okay, this has nothing to do with the need. It has everything to do coming from IT, because, you know, I like to know what the strategy going forward is, because there will come a day that you're not gonna be loading software onto a device. You're gonna be attaching to the cloud for everything you do. So that's my only point. I'm not saying it's not needed. I'm the
Okay.
last person to say that, okay?
Okay.
So, I'm okay with it. My point is the fact that I think this should be an IT piece that should have been discussed in IT committee.
I would agree.
Thank you.
Are you okay if we
Yeah,
do
yeah,
proceed?
absolutely.
Okay. So, Mrs. Bobbitt, I have you as my second, and I will be asking for suspension tonight. All right. Are there any other resolutions to come before finance? Okay. We'll start with then departmental updates, and I will turn the floor over to Clerk Sandy.
I was notified on March 5th by the auditor's office that nothing was budgeted into our workers' comp for city council. I did complete a budget adjustment, taking funds from our legal services to workers' comp in the amount of $1,795.20 to cover this. When preparing the 2021 budget, there was no option allowing me to figure this in. Maybe an administration option, as it was figured into other budgets. If legal services accounts gets low, I may need to ask for an additional appropriation to finish out the year, but as of right now, I think we'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any other
I
departmental
just wanted it on the
updates?
record.
Thank you.
It's been a long time. We are in the process of doing a facilities plan for the Miller Park water plant upgrade. And we have to, before we can apply for any kind of Ohio EPA loans, we have to have a plan completed, and it has to be approved by Ohio EPA. So to keep us on our schedule, we have to submit this plan to Ohio EPA at the beginning of May. And one of the components of the plan is public participation. So we need to be able to make a public presentation on the project to you as city council, so it will be broadcast out into the community. And we'll be doing some other public participation items, newspaper articles and web pages and things like that. But we need to be able to schedule something, hopefully the first meeting in April, that we could push it to the second meeting, but that's kind of pushing it. So I had emailed President Uhl about that earlier today.
Yeah, I responded to your email. Do you know how much time you need?
I can try and keep it to about 30 minutes.
30? I was thinking like 5.
It's got to be public participation, so we got to explain the whole project.
Maybe like 15?
Well, I assume council will have questions. So I was thinking a half an hour with council questions. And it doesn't matter to Mike and I if you want to do it at the end of council or during finance. It doesn't matter. We just have to have a public participation component.
It's like a public hearing or a public notice?
It would be a presentation that's available to the public.
I think that's all, yeah, that we have to do. We don't have to allow for comments or anything like that,
No.
right? Yeah. So my recommendation would be that we make this our April 12th at 6:30 presentation in lieu of bringing someone in from the community. Because if we were to do it in finance, that'd be your whole deal in 30 minutes.
Not my deal.
That's true. She's like, I'm out. I'm gone. Miss her.
Oh, that's great. See, now she's leaving. She's been with her over 30 minutes.
If there's no objection, we'll put it on April 12th, and we'll do it in the normal part of the presentation of council, which happens sort of early on in the meeting after communications, and we'll ask that you be as brief as possible.
I will be as brief as possible, and I will try and get you information ahead of time that may take care of some of the questions.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Okay, are there any other departmental updates?
He's coming up here because I've asked him to come up here. Some of you might already be aware, but Sean Fowler, who's been our code enforcement director, today was his first day as sanitation superintendent. And just wanted to let you know, be aware, we're moving forward with our sanitation department, as you know, I think is run very well. And so just want to make you aware, any issues, feel free to give him all the complaints. And but anyway, we're grateful and started today and looking forward to the new task before him.
I do have Bill's old number, so if you have that, that's the number I'll be carrying. No, he left the phone, so I have the number.
He did not want to be called, so he left his old phone number.
So what happened, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Second of all, what happens to in code enforcement now?
So we have a posting that went out today about that
Okay.
position, and so we're looking to fill that position as well.
But in the meantime, everything is operating as normal.
I would expect.
So anything that's coming in is getting right back out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you handle complaints?
What's that?
I said, can you handle complaints?
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, I've had a couple people complain to me in 23 years here, so.
So
I think I can
I
handle
told
it.
them about the proper use of a word besides no on some of the other things. that-
I almost, just for Tom Stoughton, almost brought in a shirt that said no on it just to wear, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Because if anybody's worked with me, they know that this is the way I dress every day, so. Yeah.
Switch it up and have a shirt that says maybe.
Maybe, yeah,
And then you can
yeah.
follow up with it.
There you go.
All
All
right.
right.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
Good evening. So I'm happy to announce that we applied for a grant to the Economic Development Administration, the EDA, and it's been approved. We just got notice today it's been awarded. So this was the $80,000 toward the traffic studies for the Ewing Street connector. So this is the start in that process. I really have to thank Mitch Nolan, who has helped so much on the application, and he's really critical to this project. And also the Port Authority has is giving the $20,000 match to this, and Mike Pettit, I need to thank him for that as well. So we're really excited with the news and for what this means. So we're really trying to connect the businesses on the east side, on East Main, to the bypass 233 on the south side. And I know this was there were studies, 10 years ago, and there was a process that got stopped, and so we're wanting to get that going again, and so this is a good start.
Great. Any questions for Linda?
Sort of a non sequitur, but an important issue, and maybe the mayor's going to address this later or one of our upcoming meetings, but the federal government is getting ready to drop just an unbelievable amount of money in the state. And a lot of that's going to be pushed down to local government. Are we in active discussions about how we can use those funds to improve infrastructure and other projects? Because this is going to be a significant pool of funds, and it's going to be an interesting opportunity to make some progress in some areas that we would not otherwise be able to make progress on.
We're aware there's money coming, but until it is a signed deal, we haven't done a whole lot with it yet. So it's been, it just passed the Senate on Saturday, I think, and it's back in the House now. So hopefully we'll know in a week or so. But yes, we're
It's
very much
time to be
aware.
thinking about it. I got a call today from a lobbying firm about southeastern Ohio, and they're starting to think about it. So,
Yep.
and there are figures being bandied about in terms of money that's gonna be
Right.
available at the community level, so.
Yep.
It's not too early for us to start thinking about it.
We understand.
Yes, we have projects in mind.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other departmental updates?
I'll mention one. We did come to a tentative agreement with the firefighters and paramedics, just to let you know. It's gonna be before the membership, and if things go well, we anticipate to bring some legislation before council next time. But you know the process of that, and we're grateful for that unit that supplies services here in the city. But that's about as much as I can tell you at this time until it goes through the membership, and then we sign off on everything.
That's a good idea, of course.
All right.
I'll follow up a little bit on an email that I sent you all on Friday regarding some projects coming up. I'll note one of them that maybe you aren't aware of, the 6th Avenue project that would run from Memorial Drive to Roosevelt. We were funded through OPWC on that, so that is a funded project, and we're trying to pull those plans together yet this year and try to accomplish that this year. I will note, we do have, we have multiple things. Obviously, you guys know about this, but this is maybe for others, the public. You know, we have multiple things that we work on, water, sewer, gas, and they all have their interests and when the timing of things that go down. And we also have the private development world that occurs simultaneously in the needs that they need at certain times. We get this funding and it has to be spent by a certain time, whereas maybe a project that's a private development project down the road needs, say, water usage by a certain time, and those don't work out, and we pave a road, and then 2 years later, we cut the road open for a big ditch. It works out because the funding doesn't really work, because of the money that we're receiving from the state. And I note this because we've been in discussions with the Project Ruby discussion. I know that 6th Avenue is something that we're planning to do, but it's possible that down the road, depending on water modeling and how that's all going to work out, that, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years down the road, it's possible that a transmission line has to come down 6th Avenue, depending on what those types of demands require. Do I want that to happen? No, I don't. Can we delay this project and push the money off to another entity, another municipality? We don't want to do that either. So we try to do the best we can, and I just want to note that. So, little update on those projects. So.
Okay. Thank you. Any other departmental updates? Seeing none, I will turn the floor over to President Wolf for tonight's meeting prep.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We just have one thing to consider tonight in meeting prep, and that's the public hearing on temporary ordinance 5-21. I don't know if there are people waiting out in the hallway. We may have to ask some folks to excuse themselves during the main part of the meeting if you're planning to stick around for that, so that we can fit in people for the public hearing, and then others can return as is needed. Other than that, I don't have anything else for meeting prep. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other items for finance? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:24.
The regular meeting of Lancaster City Council will begin at 6:30.
Dagger Law has been part of the Lancaster community for more than 110 years. This is where we live and work. You'll see us at festivals, sporting events, and all around town. We consider our clients as friends, and we walk alongside you through challenging times. Whether you're a growing business, a changing family, facing litigation, planning your future, or dealing with land issues, we're right here. We are local. We are trusted. We are experienced. Dagger Law.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio, and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS, and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.
Swing into the Carriage Company and check out our sweet deals.
If you're looking for the best selection of clean, quality used vehicles, look no further than the Carriage Company. You'll feel secure with your purchase, knowing all vehicles undergo an extensive safety and service check prior to the sale. And all vehicles can be viewed online at carriagecompany.com. The Carriage Company, located at 1031 North Memorial Drive in Lancaster.
Sweet!
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Good evening. Welcome to Lancaster City Council. Please join me in a word of prayer. Father, we are thankful for this day and your many blessings, thankful for the sun and the warm weather, thankful that vaccination numbers are going up and COVID numbers and associated deaths are going down. Thank you for the work that you've called us to do here. And on this National Women's Day, we thank you for each and every woman around this table, each woman who so faithfully serves the city of Lancaster and its residents. We ask that you would be with us tonight in the work that's set before us. May you lead, guide, and direct us, and we'll give you praise and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I hereby call this meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Here.
Mrs. Downhour.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. James.
Here.
Mr. Matlin.
Yeah.
Mr. McDaniel.
Here.
Mr. Schoonover.
Here.
Mr. Stoughton.
Here.
And Mrs. Teener.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all 9 members of Lancaster City Council are in attendance this evening. Reading and disposing of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated February 22nd, 2021.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal. Second?
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports of city officials.
Email dated March 4th, 2021 regarding Safety Committee agenda submitted by Mrs. Bobbitt. Email dated March 5th, 2021 regarding road construction ahead submitted by City Engineer Mitch Nolan. Email dated March 7th, 2021 regarding Finance Committee meeting agenda submitted by Mrs. Downhour. Series of emails dated March 8th, 2021 regarding Miller Park water plant upgrade submitted by Stormwater Manager Denise Cruz. And finally, an email dated March 8th, 2021 regarding Miller Park water plant upgrade submitted by President Ohl.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials. Second?
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of city officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any communications?
There are none to be presented.
Tonight we have on the agenda for a special presentation our Lancaster Parks and Recreation Superintendent Mike Tharp. I asked Mike to come tonight to provide an update on what's happening with the parks and specifically what the plans may be for this summer as we again look forward to many things that have not been open this past year opening back up. So thank you for being here, Mike, and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and we are looking forward to a busy summer. And I'll kick this off, and you'll say, wow, they've already started. So Orchard Hill Arboretum, where I left the last meeting, we're almost to the 200 tree mark where we're going to cut it off. The Arboretum will be dedicated on April 24th. That is Earth Day. And we're going to celebrate Arbor Day at the same time in Rising Park, both of them a combination on a Saturday. That's a joint effort with Community Action of Fairfield County and also Fairfield DD. So that'll be a nice big event with a lot of tree planting on that day. Hunter Park, as you all know, a couple years ago, year and a half ago, we put in an all-accessible park. Before we've even put the actual parking lot surface in, we found out the parking lot is too small. The playground is just inundated every day right now that it's nice out. So today we made the decision to make the parking lot bigger. We're going to put a couple other projects on hold and put money towards that project so we don't have to come back and redo a bigger parking lot in the future. We're just going to make it the way it should be right off the bat. Hunter Park restrooms, they will soon open. We put those in last year. We just have not opened those yet. So when Hunter Park opens here in probably the next month with the new parking lot, it will open up with a brand new restroom also. Kind of a neat project. Miller Park Dog Park. We've got $16,000 of the $22,000 it's going to take to make that dog park come to fruition. That's going to happen this spring. We're confident about that. The Bowers Park project, the Ohio Operating Engineers will start that project sometime late spring, early summer. They will finish the Bowers property as far as the grading work in 2021 by Thanksgiving. So we should have a functional baseball, softball complex at the Bowers Park by the spring of 2023. Extension of the OUL bike path, our Lancaster Bike Trail. Right now, in a combined effort with private funds, we're looking at the Mary Ruffner Covered Bridge that's out off of State Route 13. We want to bring it back into the county. It used to be out by Rushville on Gun Barrel Road. That's county parks, city parks, Sensory Trail. There's a lot of players involved in this to bring that bridge back home and extend the bike path from OUL north to get us to Rainbow Drive. Exciting project. Cleanup of Cincy Park. If you haven't been to Cincy Park lately, the park's really come a long way in the last month. A lot of cleanup. It just looks like a park should look again. There's also a trout stocking going to happen there in the near future. Just finished a facelift with the Nature Center at Alley Park. In Alley Park, we're also replacing all the exterior doors as a part of a summer project. 505 children out of the city of Lancaster just signed up to play spring soccer. That is dang near a record for just city kids. We've got another 300 plus that will come in from the county, plus 2 new alliances we've made with other close to our county, Sheridan being one of them, teams that will be coming in to play soccer. So this soccer season, spring, will go over 800 kids very easily. We just signed up 111 kids to play spring flag football. It's a brand new program for us, especially in the spring. We've done it in the fall a couple years now. Spring football, 111 kids signed up. That's pretty cool. Adult kickball, sign up. We're going to do this a little earlier this year than we've ever done it in the past. The registration is underway there, so that's an ongoing. Columbus Blue Jackets, we've got a program there called Columbus Street Jackets Program. We're going to be playing street hockey in the city of Lancaster with the Columbus Blue Jackets actually coming down and facilitating and helping and training our people and working with the kids. New project for us there. Central Ohio Climbers Coalition, brand new rock climbing called bouldering. It's going to happen at Keller Kern. We've already put up the new kiosk that they will facilitate all their information. And we've also, the new trail that goes back to the rock outcropping that they're going to use for this bouldering has already been done. So that's an ongoing project that will open in the next few weeks. Olive Dale Health and Fitness Center, that continues to get back on its feet after the COVID. Summer camps, registration's open for all the summer camps at Alley Park. That registration's ongoing. Pools, we're going to open swimming pools this summer. Right now, our concern is the number of kids to work with swimming pools are not where we need them to be or want them to be. As we morph forward with this employment opportunity for children, for kids, young adults, college kids, even adults if you want to jump in on the summer program, the opportunity is there, but the numbers are not there yet. So as we get to that point, we're going to make some decisions. You know, maybe we'll have to open Tiki 4 days a week, Miller 3, vice versa. I'm not sure, but right now we don't even have close to the number of lifeguards, concession workers, cashiers that we need to open up both pools at the same time. New shade structure will be going up at Tiki. 2 years ago, we took down a lot of trees that were making a mess of the swimming pool out at Tiki. This year, we're going to replace a shade structure that will help a little bit of shade out there at Tiki. Events this year, like I said, Arbor Day, Earth Day, April 24th. That's coming. That will also be the dedication, like I said, but there'll be several proclamations made that day. The mayor will be doing a proclamation for Arbor Day. County Commissioner will be doing a proclamation for Earth Day, and then again, that's the dedication of the new Arboretum at Rising Park. Friday night bandstand. Glad to see Friday night bandstand coming back. We're going to open it up a week later. We're going to open it up June 4th with Bad Influence, of course. It's going to go for 7 weeks instead of the normal 10. We're going to quit the Friday prior to the festival opening this year, just because we weren't sure how this was all going to morph forward. We didn't want to go at it with reckless abandon, so we're trying to be cautious. So Friday night bandstand will be back. We've got Motown Sounds of Touch that will be coming back. We've got Aftermath, which is a 60s American side, kind of the vice versa of the British invasion. Blues this year, that's a new venture for us. So looking forward to that one. And again, we continue to get great support from Friends of the Lancaster Park. Their board right now is doing a bang-up job of fundraising and bringing in dollars for Lancaster Parks to use money other than our budget. What do you think?
I think that was fantastic. Questions? Ms. Teener?
You're going to have the Saturday night movies at Miller?
Yes,
again?
I never even thought of that. Yes, we are going to do the teen dance. We are going to do the movie nights at Miller Pool. We're also going to do a movie night at Tiki Pool, something we've never done yet. We're also going to have an adult night, something, well, where, you know, we can do things that are a little more fun, adult-oriented for pool goers. The kids can stay at home. So, yeah, we'll have a DJ that night, and we'll have lights flickering and just a lot of fun. Anything else?
Excellent. Other questions? Yes, Mr. Matley.
Not a question, a comment. I want to thank you for going to Mayor Park last week and meeting with the people that play pickleball. They called me and were really appreciative of your listening to what they had to say and what they wanted. We hope that works out good.
Thank you. The pickleball group in Lancaster is a growing entity, and if you've ever seen pickleball, this group now is comprised of high school students to 60, 70, I don't know, there might even be an 80-year-old in that group. It's probably the fastest growing sport on American soil right now, pickleball. Paul will attest to that. It was the largest sport at the Senior Olympics, and it continues to grow here in Lancaster. We're going to turn Mayor Park tennis courts into Mayor Park pickleball courts. They were patient with us because we couldn't come up with the funds to do it. We had it dedicated as a 2020 project. 2020 fell through. We didn't have the money to push this project forward in 2021. So in 2022, that will be our goal, is to get pickleball courts done in the spring of 2022, so they have a nice facility to play at from here on out.
Yes, Ms. Teeter.
Are you going to have the tennis, you might have said this and I missed it, tennis tournaments or clinics this year for tennis?
Yes, we are. That will continue. Lancaster, the Fairfield County Tennis Tournament, and we will do the tennis clinics.
In June?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, nothing changes there.
Great. Yes, Mr. McDaniel.
Probably just a comment. Actually, I'll let you tell us. All these things you described, how many employees you have, full-time employees you have at your department?
17.
You do all this with 17 employees?
We do almost 1,000 acres now, 32 properties, 27 which are park with 17 employees.
Yeah, and
18, because you just allowed me to hire another one last city council meeting, so yes, I've got 18 now.
I can tell you this is one of the hardest working group of people that I've seen. They've got 730 acres, 2 pools, how many parks?
27 named parks.
It's a huge undertaking, and I just have to say, your people do a fine job.
They're completely
And we keep
awesome.
adding programs. At some point, there's a top limit there, but thank you for all you do.
Thanks for the support of council and the community. We couldn't do it without all the volunteers and all the help we get.
Great. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Stem.
So I haven't been by there in a long time, but I used to play tennis over at Elmwood.
Elmwood.
What's going on with Elmwood?
Elmwood's beyond repair at this point. We're going to take the tennis courts at Elmwood completely out and give a bigger area, green space for the kids in the neighborhood to play. So, yeah, Elmwood tennis courts will leave probably this summer. They're in bad disrepair.
I know they are.
Yeah. Anything else?
Very good. Yes, Mr. Stoughton.
I have a couple of financial questions. So you said you were basically halting a couple projects to create additional parking at Hunter Park.
Yes.
So what's the cost of the additional parking?
So Kiwanis, when we put this project kind of on the back burner last fall, Kiwanis had anticipated putting $42,000 in the parking lot at Hunter Park. When we seen what was going on this spring with the excess that we needed more parking, I looked at the finances and looked at a couple projects that are on the table right now, and I think from the parks we can put another $20,000 into Hunter Park, and then I just got off the phone with one of the Kiwanis board members late this afternoon, and they will go up to $47,000. The bottom line figure for the parking lot at Hunter Park is $63,000 right now. So 47 from Kiwanis will make up the difference, is the thought.
And what would that 16 grand have done otherwise?
That 16 grand, initially, some of that 16 grand would have been to replace the sidewalks around Firehouse Park. Firehouse Park has been in disrepair for a while. An underutilized park. It's used a lot by St. Mary's and that organization. Another one is part of the Alley Park funds. Between Firehouse Park and the Alley Park Fund, we can pull $16,000 out of those two to complete the Hunter parking project.
Okay. And then finally, the pickleball courts to pickleball stadium, field, whatever.
Yes, sir.
the pickleball thing is. What's the cost to do that renovation?
When we went into 2020, we were going to throw $50,000 at that project and found out real quick that that was not enough money to do this project and do it right. My first year here in 2016, we redid the tennis courts at Rising Park for $42,000. So in my mind, that was the right number. Once we got to looking at Mayor Park and how big the cracks were throughout that court, it became really evident really quick that this is probably an $80,000 project to bring Mayor Park. The other thing we're going to do right now, Mayor Park, is 4 tennis courts. When we divide these down for pickleball, there's actually enough room to put 12 pickleball courts in place of 4 tennis courts. That's how much smaller the court actually is. So after talking with the pickleball group, I think what they want is actually 10 courts and then a little kind of a waiting area on each end and a little more room between the courts. So our goal is to turn 4 tennis courts into 10 pickleball courts in the spring of 2023 for somewhere around $80,000.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments? Well, Mike, I echo the sentiments of many here that have said that the amount of work that you and your team do with the amount of resource that you have is unbelievable, and we appreciate all that you do for the city and are thankful for the update tonight. So thanks for being here. Let's show Mike our appreciation for
Thank
him
you.
and his team.
Appreciate your support.
All right, are there any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
During this time at Lancaster City Council, we set time aside to allow the voters and taxpayers of the city to address City Council on any item or issue that they would like. If you'd like to address Lancaster City Council tonight, we invite you to come forward to the podium, sign in with your name and address, not on the green one, but on the what color one?
Silver.
On the silver one. And
Wait a second. Voters and taxpayers green.
oh boy, okay, on the green one.
Green. I was thinking ahead.
That's okay. On the green one, if you're going to speak. Is anyone here tonight going to speak during voter and taxpayer time, or can we just, forge ahead? This is not the opportunity for the public hearing, so if you're here for that, you will have an opportunity to speak later on in the meeting. Is there anyone who wants to address City Council on any item or issue other than that tonight? Seeing none, we will move ahead. Thank you all for being here. Are there reports of standing committees?
There are. Finance Committee meeting dated February 22nd, 2021, submitted by Mrs. Downhour. Water Pollution Control meeting minutes dated February 10th, 2021, submitted by Mr. James. And finally, the Code Enforcement and Zoning meeting dated March 1st, 2021, submitted by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there reports of special committees?
There are none to be presented.
With that, we will move on to the public hearing tonight. This is a public hearing on temporary ordinance 5-21. Let me try to briefly lay out how this is going to work tonight. In a moment, I'll ask the clerk to read the preamble for this particular piece of legislation. After she does so, I will turn things over to the sponsor, which I believe is Mr. Matlin, right? Mr. Matlin will provide opening comments. After that, we'll have a time for members of Lancaster City Administration to provide any presentation that they may like on this particular project. Once that concludes, we will move on to the public portion, which allows proponents and opponents of this piece of legislation to speak. We'll ask first for proponents, those in favor of this legislation, followed by opponents, those who oppose it. After that, we will enter into a time of rebuttal. Those who are proponents will have opportunity to speak in rebuttal, and then those who are opponents. Let me just briefly note that if you plan to speak in rebuttal the second time around, you must have first spoken in the first round of comments in order to be able to do so. Once proponents and opponents have had opportunity to speak and rebuttal has happened, I will turn it back to the sponsor of the legislation for final comments, and we will close the public hearing. With that, if there are no questions, we'll ask that the clerk please read the preamble.
An ordinance to repeal and replace Lancaster Codified Ordinance Part 11, Planning and Zoning Code, Title 3, Zoning and Property Restrictions, Chapter 1135, Industrial Districts, Chapter 1151, Off-Street Parking and Off-Street Loading, and Chapter 1161, Definitions of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Lancaster, offered by Mr. Matlin.
Thank you very much. Mr. Matlin.
This zoning change, we talked about it some last week in the code enforcement zoning meeting. Really what it does is it brings Lancaster a little further forward in times with the demand for, or possibility of using containers, shipping containers for homes or other reasons. It adds that language to the zoning code, which was not even there before. So, and then it establishes where they can be in this, which is industrial light, industrial mediums, not in residential areas yet. So basically it just introduces the language to our current zoning code and establishes where these things could be with the same restrictions that any other house or business. They've got to do the same building code, same plans reviews, same site preparation as anybody else. So that's what it does.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mallon. Is there anyone from Lancaster City Administration who would like to present on this project this evening? Mr. Pettit.
Thank you. So across America, construction costs are skyrocketing. The cost of home ownership is skyrocketing due to increased values of homes, existing homes. So building, buying, it's far outpacing the wages of our workforce. And so we need to be creative in how we can make home ownership a opportunity for folks that otherwise cannot do it and can't get there. At this, on the other side of this spectrum, we have old industrial lands that for some reason or another, there was at one time 50 years ago, there was an old industrial building there. Industry today does not want to be mixed in with residential. That they want to be in industrial parks. And so we have land that we can use for infill to help our residents be able to attain home ownership. The cost to extend our utilities, you know what those are, so that we can get more and more infill with our existing utilities and put these properties back to use and so that they don't become a blight to our community is important. Being creative and as with the community reinvestment area overlay that we did for 3 units or more, the legislation that's on for final read tonight for the rezoning for 3 units of the RS4 change. These are all pieces of the puzzle to help us make that dream a reality for our residents. So the Economic Development Department does support this legislation, and we have a manufacturer right here in Lancaster that makes these type of homes. And I'm sure Pete's here tonight, and I'm sure Pete would be glad to give you a tour of his existing model that he has over on Walnut Street. So with that, Stephanie created the change with the wording and with the support of Pete Vale. And so if there's any questions, I would say that address to all 3 of us, with those 2 being more on the specifics of the actual legislation.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Pettit. Mr. Pettit brings up the important point that I always glance over, which is during this time, members of council do have the opportunity to ask questions and interact with those who are speaking, unlike voter and taxpayer time. And so I will ask, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Pettit or for Mr. Vale or Ms. Hall tonight? Okay. If not, thank you, Mr. Pettit, for being here. Ms. Hall, would you like to come forward?
Just briefly, wanted to point out a couple of things that Mike missed on the legislative side. So, container homes would be a special exception use in the industrial districts, only industrial light and only industrial moderate, like Councilman Matlin said, because our industrial heavy are too limited. We need to reserve those for the larger industrial uses, and that was the intent behind it, and that's why the legislation is written like it is. Also, it's written so that these are special exception uses, which means they have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals before they can be allowed to exist there. And to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals and be granted a special exception use, you have to show that the use can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, without substantial impairment of the general purpose and intent of the zoning district in which the use is to be located, and without significant incompatibility with the general character of the neighborhood. The Board of Zoning Appeals also gets to set out appropriate conditions and safeguards in conformance with the purposes and intent of the code. So the legislation that Pete and I put together makes these a special exception use, which means they go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. And at the Board of Zoning Appeals, they have to have a detailed site plan. If it's in the CRA 3, there's another layer of oversight because it goes to the mayor, and the mayor has to approve that as well. If they're not in the CRA 3, then they still can have the opportunity to use this. Didn't see any reason to limit it to the CRA 3 overlay district. But they would have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals still and meet all of those conditions and have any appropriate terms and conditions that the Board of Zoning Appeals sees for that specific location added.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Hall or Mr. Bale?
Great, thank you.
Ms. Hall, just to clarify, so for each and every one of these, they would have to go before the BZA?
Yes.
It can't just, this passes and then you're free to go ahead?
No, every single one goes before the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else from Lancaster City Administration who would like to present on this project this evening? Seeing none, we will move to proponents of this project, those from the public who would like to speak in favor of this particular piece of legislation. Yes, sir. If you'll just come forward, state your name and address for the record, and then after your comments, you can sign in on the silver clipboard.
Yes.
And we'll be ready to go.
My name is Pete Swartz, and I'm also one of the owners and general manager of Max Container Options Manufacturing here in Lancaster. I'd like to put a positive light on the container homes being manufactured and take the stigma of a metal box away from what most people think. And does everybody have one of these papers here we gave out? There's a lot of information in there, but I'll just kind of skip through it and try to be done in about 5 minutes. We can make a container out of anything. Bridges, container bridges, container homes, bunker homes, swimming pools, storefronts. It can be one container, it can be 100 containers. Right now, we're building 3 or 4 of them. That's $500,000, between $300,000 and $600,000. And we got $100,000 swimming pools we're building. We're building container cabins in Hocking County, Vinton County. And some of the big ones that we're building now is down Vinton County. So I would love to be able to see where we could build some of these here in Lancaster. It'd be great. Just to go through, these homes are safer than a normal home. I mean, they're so tight, airtight, that it takes hardly nothing to heat and cool your home. And they're fireproof on the outside anyway. But we can change the outside of the container. It doesn't look like a container. We can put concrete sides on it. We can put any kind of coverings on the outside, and we stack them in any direction. And there are the hottest things going now down in Hocking County in rental-wise. Everybody wants a container home rental, and we're really getting booked up. So, and just to take the idea, there's some of these pictures in here. The second to last page, there's a $500,000 home there, and it doesn't look like a container home. It's where we can take it to. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And our shop is at 1450 East Walnut here in Lancaster, and we do have a model there. It's a 40-footer. I invite all of you to come down, take a look at it, and go through the shop. And see how well put together they are. I mean, they're second to none. They're the best. So, other than that, got any questions?
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Ms. Bobbitt.
Thanks for being here tonight, Pete. So if Melody Bobbitt doesn't want to make hers all swanky and contemporary, what's average? Is there an average?
Oh, let's see.
You know, if we just wanna, drywall it, plain,
Let's see, the blue one, I don't know what page that is. That's a 40-footer, standard 40-foot cabin right there.
yes.
Yeah, that's with no cladding, that's just bare container. But we can take that same size container and put any kind of cladding on the outside and you won't know it's a container. And these also, every shipping container, we can put a rooftop deck on it, because it's, it's flat and you can walk on it. We can put stilts on it, you can drive your carports under it. There's literally, there's nothing we can't do,
I can see that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bobbitt. Yes, Mr. James?
Are you building these from scratch, or you're actually obtaining these from already being constructed?
No, we buy new containers and we manufacture them. And you need to come on down and we'll show you what we're doing.
Will.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. James. Further questions today? All right, Mr. Schwartz, thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you.
And don't forget to sign in there for us if you don't mind.
Already done that.
Thank you. Very good. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak as a proponent in favor of this legislation this evening?
It's amazing on TV the way they've looked it up.
All right, seeing none then, we'll move on to opponents. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to this legislation tonight? Okay, seeing no opponents then, we will move into rebuttal. And Mr. Schwartz, if you have anything else you'd like to say, this is your chance. He's all set. Very good. We had no opponents then. Therefore, we will close this portion of the public hearing and turn it back to the sponsor for final comments. Mr. Mallon.
Like I said, it introduces the wording to the zoning code. It lets us get a start on something that a lot of people, like Mr. Schwartz says, are looking for, and it establishes where they can be in the city, so you don't have residents worried that somebody's gonna put a container next to their brand-new $500,000 house in the Highlands or something, because it's not allowed there. It's gonna be in the industrial lights, the industrial mediums for right now. And every one of these plans has to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals, so somebody is gonna look at it before it's approved. So I think it's a good thing, and we should approve it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mallon. Yes, Ms. Bobbitt.
Can I ask Stephanie a question? So right now, if we don't make this change, I can build this anywhere, right? Without going to the building?
It would depend on bulk and area requirements and that kind of thing and where you intend to put it, but potentially it could be in a residential neighborhood, yes.
So this spells it out, but this also tightens it up a little bit.
Yes,
Okay,
that's accurate.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Wait a second. Now that you're standing there, I do have a question.
Mr. Stoughton.
I look at some of these pictures and they're pretty nice. They would fit nicely in some of our residential neighborhoods. So are we gonna have a time where there's gonna be a request to, change this from the, light industrial areas to our normal residential areas?
I honestly can't tell you. What I know is the thought behind this was to get started and to start the process and see how it's received, and what those actually look like. Because right now it's all hypothetical. These are great pictures, and you're absolutely right. I wouldn't mind living next to most of these, but we just want to make sure that we start where they're going to blend in a little more seamlessly, and then at that point, see how it's going and how the citizens of Lancaster respond to that, and go from there, I think is the idea.
Thank you for that, and Pete, thank you for all the information in there, because it does open your eyes in a whole different way when you think of a container.
Very good. Any further questions or comments before we close the public hearing this evening? Okay, very good. Then we will close the public hearing, and we will be voting on that legislation later on this evening. We will now move on to the reading of resolutions, beginning with the second reading of temporary resolution 32-21.
A resolution authorizing the City of Lancaster to apply for the Meals on Wheels Older Adult Alternatives of Fairfield County, Inc., 2021 through 2022 grant offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Schoonover.
Second and three readings, please.
Second reading on temporary resolution 32-21, temporary resolution 33-21.
A resolution authorizing the filing of an application with the Ohio Department of Transportation for grants through the United States Department of Transportation Federal Transit Administration as authorized under federal transit laws as codified 49 U.S.C. Section 5311, financial assistance for other than urbanized areas and funds available from the Ohio Public Transportation Grant Program and Ohio Elderly Disabled Transit Fare Assistance Program 5339, 5339B, OTP2, RTP, STP, E&D, and any other grants that become available through the Ohio, or ODOT, and executing a contract with Ohio Department of Transportation upon each grant application approval, offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mrs. Downhour.
What? I didn't get that. What'd you say?
I'll send it to you.
Did not get that.
Mr. President, I'd like to
I think-
make a motion that
I
council
think-
suspend
yeah, I
its
think we might
rules
have
and
some
waive the
support for that.
third reading of temporary resolution 3321 to save Miss Sandy from reading it again.
Very good. Is there a
I'll
second for
second
the
that.
motion? We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 33-21. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover.
I'm willing to suspend, not just for Miss Sandy, but the fact that these are annual pieces that Miss Woody from Public Transit applies for every year, and it's, really 95, 99% of how that department is funded. So I feel good in being able to ask for suspension on Transit's behalf and Teresa's.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 3321.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 33-21. Further discussion, Mr. Schoonover?
Yes, sir.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 33-21 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 34-21.
A resolution authorizing the Surface Safety Director to advertise for bids for the Lateral D Phase 1 Trunk Sewer Project, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
This is the second of three readings. We've also covered this at some length during some of the previous Finance Committee meetings.
Thank you, Mr. James. Second reading on temporary resolution 34-21. Temporary resolution 36-21.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate with the county auditor in the Parks and Recreation Fund 2012, offered by Mrs. Teener, seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Mrs. Teener.
Second of three readings, please.
Second reading on temporary resolution 36-21. We now have first reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with temporary resolution 39-21.
A resolution to authorize the then and now certificate to pay an invoice to Squire Patton and Boggs, offered by Mrs. Downer, seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Ms. Downhour.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporary number 39-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 39-21. Discussion, Ms. Downhour?
No, I'll say that.
Discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Ms. Downhour.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 39-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 39-21. Discussion, Ms. Downhour.
Yes, thank you. This is to pay for outside legal services that are associated with Project Ruby. We had a purchase order last year, but received an invoice for January and February costs, and it is in the amount of $4,387.50.
Thank you, Ms. Downhour. Further discussion on the motion to pass.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbit?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 39-21 passes 9-0. Temporary Resolution 40-21.
A resolution to increase receipts and appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of other sources with the county auditor and the LDOT Improvement Fund 3014, offered by Mr. Schoonover, seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third readings of temporary resolution 4021.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 40-21. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover? No, thanks. Discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbit?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 4021.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 40-21. Mr. Schoonover.
Yeah, this piece is, so we can, receive, a check from Lemon Development as the next step in the Timber Top project, where we're providing construction services to, get them started on their curbs, roads, and everything up there in the Timber Top project. So, just a matter of moving this or accepting this money to turn around and pay for those services.
Thank you, Mr. Schoonover. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbit?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 40-21 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 41-21.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the South Water Plant Concentrate Line Project Improvement Project, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Hall.
Mr. James,
This is the second of two readings.
first of two readings.
I'm sorry, first of two readings.
Very good. First reading on temporary resolution 41-21. Temporary resolution 42-21.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the purchase of pipe and fittings for use by the Division of Water, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James,
This is the first of two readings.
first two readings on temporary resolution 42-21. Temporary resolution 43-21.
A resolution to increase receipts and appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate with the county auditor in the General Fund 1001, offered by Mrs. Downhour and seconded by Mrs. Bobbit.
Ms. Downhour.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 43-21.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 43-21. Discussion, Ms. Downhour?
I will save it.
Discussion on the motion to suspend? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbit?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Ms. Downhour.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 43-21.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 43-21. Discussion, Ms. Downhour.
Yes, thank you. This resolution is to allow for the engineering department to upgrade some computer equipment and software. It is in the amount of $6,500, and as we talked about in finance, the need is definitely there, so we're asking for it to be passed tonight.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Downhour. Further discussion on the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbit?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 43-21 passes 9-0. Are there any further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we will move to the reading of ordinances, beginning with the third reading of temporary ordinance 4-21.
An ordinance to repeal and replace Lancaster Codified Ordinance Part 11, Planning and Zoning Code, Title III, Zoning and Property Restrictions, Chapter 1123, General Provisions, Chapter 1129, Residential Districts, Chapter 1133, Commercial Districts, Chapter 1151, Off-Street Parking and Off-Street Loading, and Chapter 1161, Definitions of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Lancaster, offered by Mr. Matlin and seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. Matlin.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion, council pass and gross enter upon the written record, ordinance temporarily numbered 421.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 4-21. Discussion, Mr. Mallon.
We had a public hearing last meeting about this, and there was no opposition here. I think it's a good thing for economic development, and we should pass it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mallon. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 4-21 passes 9-0. Temporary ordinance 5-21.
An ordinance to repeal and replace Lancaster Codified Ordinance, Part 11, Planning and Zoning Code, Title III, Zoning and Property Restrictions, Chapter 1135, Industrial Districts, Chapter 1151, Off-Street Parking and Off-Street Loading, and Chapter 1161, Definitions of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Lancaster, offered by Mr. Matlin and seconded by Mr. Hall.
Mr. Matlin.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion, council pass and gross enter upon the written record, ordinance temporarily numbered 521.
Second.
A motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 5-21. Discussion, Mr. Matlin.
This was what we had the public hearing for tonight, the container homes. Again, I think it's a good thing to bring us into some more modern times.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Matlin. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 5-21 passes 9-0. We now have second reading on temporary ordinance 8-21.
An ordinance to repeal and replace Lancaster Codified Ordinance Part 9, Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, Title 5, Other Public Services, Chapter 937, Waste Removal of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Lancaster, offered by Mrs. Teener and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Ms. Teener.
This is second of three readings.
Second reading on temporary ordinance 8-21. We have nothing for first reading tonight. Are there further ordinances to come before Lancaster City Council? If not, we have no tabled legislation this evening. Does anyone have unfinished business? Mr. McDaniel.
I just want to mention the Parks Department need of employment for the pools. The pools take approximately 42 employees, 25, 26 lifeguards between the two pools, and the rest of the employees would be cashiers, which actually do a lot more than that. This is a great summer job. It's a great part-time job from the ages of 15 up. So if we have anybody listening that has grandchildren or children that would like a summer job, get with the Lancaster Parks Department and see about doing such a job. But I would also mention that the YMCA is conducting a lifeguard class coming up very soon. So you wouldn't necessarily have to be lifeguard certified today, as long as you have it before the pool opens. So just a shout out for them.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. Further unfinished business this evening? If not, does anyone have any new business? Seeing none, we'll move on and ask that the clerk read our upcoming schedule of meetings.
Upcoming schedule for the next regular meeting is March 22nd. The meeting following is April 12th, both meetings at 6:30 PM here in council chambers. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days. Water Pollution Control, March 10th, 8 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. Economic Development, March 18th at 7:30 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. IT Telecom, March 19th at 7:45 a.m. at the City Hall Conference Room, 1897 Conference Room. Finance, March 22nd at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. And finally, a service committee, April 2nd at 7:30 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room.
Thank you very much. Are there any bills?
There is one, Spotlight Trophies and Awards, $28.50 for a plaque.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to pay the bill.
Second.
A motion and a second to pay the bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there a need for an executive session this evening? If not, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Mr. President, I would like to make that motion and we adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Please remember to sign your legislation. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Have a good night.